I mean, it's like, for example, but imagine you're out in the battlefield and you see some really cool thing you've never seen before, like somebody getting shot and falling down to the ground, and you think, that's not cool, obviously, but that would make a great shot. Unfortunately, you didn't capture that shot. And so, it's a huge timing thing. If you want to catch somebody right in the act of getting shot, it's a big thing. And so I could see where, at a certain point, you would kind of give up on trying to actually capture that moment and just ask some soldier, slip him a few pesos and say, dude, would you fall to the ground just like, and in a war correspondent's mind, it's actually, if he does it in such a way that it looks just like all these other guys that you've seen getting shot, then it's like, hey, I recreated the moment, I wasn't able to capture it.
And the act of staging photos was what a lot of photographers were forced to do during the Spanish Civil War, specifically because of the fact that the photographers were not allowed onto the front line.
Which makes sense.
Yes.
They're not allowed, or else it's a timing thing, like I said.
So here's the crux, or here's the basis of the information that really is throwing this theory forward at this point for a lot of people, is that while Robert Capa was in Cerro Mariano, he did take photos of refugees, those refugees we talked about that Hans had gotten photos of. But at that point, he had not yet taken the photo of the falling soldier. So basically, the photos were out of order when the print house developed them. They put them in the incorrect order. And instead, he took that image a day or more later, several days later, at an entirely different location in a village called Espejo, which is about 30 miles or 50 kilometers south of where he supposedly was. And at that point, when they got to that town, there was literally nothing happening because they had been, on the 5th and the 6th, they were there. There's all this action. And they say, we're going to go somewhere else. And they get to that somewhere else, which is Espejo, according to this theory, and nothing's going on. Listen, we're bored. They talked the local soldiers into running some maneuvers for them because, hey, you'll get your photo taken, and this is the days where getting your photo taken is still a novel thing. So they run these exercises, and if you look at the photos, there's images of the photographer, whoever the photographer is, whether it's Capa or Taro, are in the trench, and the soldiers are jumping over the trench, and then they're bending over this mound of dirt, quote unquote, firing at the enemy. They're running. They're doing all of these maneuvers, and
they're LARPing.
Kind of are LARPing.
They're LARPing.
Live
action role playing.
And they may have been doing that for the benefit of the camera. And at one point, they said, hey, you know what, like Joe said, do you mind just running and getting, quote-unquote, getting shot? Yeah.
It's like, so one soldier's like there, and another soldier's going, pew, 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 pew.
Yeah, in Spanish. Yes, pew in Spanish, whatever that is.
I think it's still pew.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, but here's the thing, is that if we look at the images that are taken at the same time as the falling soldier, there's some damning images because there's an image of a man laying on his back with his rifle across his chest. He appears to be deceased, but his arms are kind of folded over his chest in that I'm laying here dead or somebody's posed
pretending
me.
To be,
There's also another man who is falling and appears to as if he is falling almost as if he has been shot.
Yeah.
And here's the hardest part about that. There's not a whole lot of other information in the photo. The ground appears to be rather recently cut wheat.
Yeah.
But what you can see is the background.
Crop, yeah.
Some kind of stock crop. Yeah, off in the distance,
clouds.
You can see some mountains. You can see what looks like some tilled fields and maybe a farmhouse. They're very, very far and hard to see.
And maybe almost something that maybe possibly could be a lake.
That's actually a field.
That's
actually a field.
But the unfortunate thing, right, that you're about to say is that, like, the background of both of of these images
is
like,
almost identical.
Yeah.
Oh,
I line them up. You two have seen this image that I put
Yeah.
on. My thing is I put stuff into Photoshop and I start toggling back and forth.
and then
I
you
put
post
these-
gifs of it.
And then I give you
Yeah.
guys gifs of these images
Yeah.
flipping back and forth. And these images laid on top of each other are almost a perfect match, as if the images were taken almost on the exact same spot. which
It's
is-
almost
Well-
like somebody put a camera somewhere and was like, okay, actor 1,
Yeah,
go,
I-
actor 2, go, actor
Well-
3, go.
Somebody did put it. Yeah, it appears to me that the camera was not on the same spot. It was on a tripod. It absolutely did not move.
No,
because,
yeah.
if you look at the borders and stuff, and the features in the background and the foreground and everything, it appears to me that it was on a tripod.
Yeah, no, but that's what I mean. Is
I
it like
actually- I don't-
literally?
And like Devin said,
I don't think it's on a tripod because the falling soldier, everything is in motion, and that's hard to do on a tripod.
Uh-huh.
Whereas the second soldier is perfectly crisp.
yeah.
Yeah, this Chris.
But either way, it was somebody standing there with a camera, stationary,
Yeah.
going, okay,
Yeah.
all right, we got a line of soldiers. Now
Yeah.
everybody's going to fake being shot. All right,
It could
one,
have been a competition.
2,
you know.
3, yeah, who can do the best fake?
Yeah.
Who can do it?
And the thing
Which
is,
is cynical, but...
Well, and this second
Makes
soldier,
sense.
this second soldier who appears to be falling down, he's very identifiable when you compare him to the falling soldier, because whereas the falling soldier is in a white shirt and light colored pants, this man is in what they call a boiler suit, basically a jumpsuit. And whereas the falling soldier has his ammo bags on his hip and the suspenders are going over his
Yeah.
shoulders, this second guy in the boiler suit, his suspenders almost run up the center of his torso before wying off over each shoulder. So very different. They look different.
Yeah.
They're holding their guns different. Like,
the thing that's really interesting about these photos is when you were like, oh, I posted a GIF. Before I had done any kind of reading or research on this, I was like, oh, there's the real and the fake. Right?
Probably both
Where
ways.
I thought that second one with the more identifiable one, I mean, because his fatigues look real, worn in, looks like he's done some stuff. His body is just like crumpled. You know, I was like,
oh, the second soldier,
yeah,
the
the
one that's
second
like got his
soldier,
arm folded
the not
underneath him.
famous one. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, that looks like a human who just got shot and is dead. And then the other one, I was like, wow, that's a really clean outfit to be.
It was very clean.
Middle of a
Well, it might have been his
war.
first day in the trenches. You
Sure,
never know.
but I mean that was the interesting thing to me about this whole thing was that you posted these pictures, and my immediate thought
Was
at
it, here's
least-
the fake of the
yeah,
fakes?
and at least as you know, like somebody who knows historical fashion and things like that, was like, oh, there's the costume and there's the original.
So here's the deal: is that there's a guy. His name is Jose Manuel Suspergui. I believe is how you say it. He's a university professor in Spain, and what he did is he took these two photos. Or he didn't take actually the falling man photo. He took the man laying prone and quote unquote shot and dead, and the boiler suit man photo, and he sent those around to people in the area in Spain to try and identify the background. And that's how we have this idea that it is probably in Espejo is where the photo was taken. And the real big problem, because these people are like, oh yeah, no, I recognize this. And then they got a hold of locals who were, you know, at this point, old men and women at that time and said, oh yeah, the fighting here, there was early in September, and it wasn't more fighting until the 25th of September. Well, remember, View ran the image on the 23rd of September, so it can't be fighting in Espejo. That really makes a lot of problems then, because if it is that he took that in Espejo, then it appears that there was no conflict.
Yeah.
Which appears that then it does lead a lot of credence to the idea that, oh no, it was
Maybe.
it was totally staged for the camera.
Or maybe somebody just shot the guy. Wasn't even war related.
Yeah, and that's actually, we're going to get that into our next theory.
Or actually, another theory that I like right now is that it didn't mean to stage somebody getting shot. He was actually going to take a portrait of the soldier, and he says, "Back up a little bit." and they said, "That's beautiful. I love it." Yeah,
Monty Python. Oh,
yeah.
No. And listen, this is we've said this a couple of times, but this is not the first instance, if indeed this theory is true, of somebody manipulating a photo. You guys probably have seen this photo, you two in the room, but everybody else out there may have as well. There is a photo titled "The Valley of the Shadow of Death" by Roger Fenton, and
Also a Coolio song.
what's that? Oh, Coolio song.
Yeah.
It's from 1855, and it's during it's the Crimean War, and there's this road, and there is cannonballs all up and down the sides of the road and all over the road itself, and it is just like, what the hell kind of crazy conflict took place here? And that is the photo that became very iconic until later on a sister photograph showed up, which was the same scene from the same location, same angle, everything, except there was no cannonballs on the road.
Did they Photoshop the balls in there?
No, it turns out they took a lot of work for like 100 years or 150 years for people to figure this out. Photoshop is how they figured it out. The photographer did the second photo, the no cannonballs on road photo, and then he and his assistants went out and grabbed cannonballs off of the side of the road and chucked them onto the road, because the military, as they were moving through, had kicked all of the cannonballs out of the way, because you can't have your horses and your carts coming through with these balls in the way. So they pushed them into the ditches. They put them all back on the road, or a bunch of them, to then take this second photo that was obviously much more powerful, because everybody went, oh my gosh, look at that.
Right. Well, and actually that's totally authentic, because the first balls were on the road, because somebody put them there, and then the second ones were there because somebody put them there. So hey, there you go. And there's another actually really iconic photograph we've all seen, and it's been questioned for about 50 plus years now about whether it was staged or not, and that is the famous photo of this half a dozen Marines raising the flag on the Iwo Jima in the Pacific in World War II. Yeah. And that was and that one's pretty certifiably absolutely not staged, but there were questions about it still for like 50
Understandably,
plus years. Yeah. I mean,
there's a famous photo of here in Oregon, the Columbia River Gorge. This was back in the mid 1800s, and there was a photographer. God, I can't remember his name now, but he was using these crazy monstrous plate cameras, like 22 by 30 inch plates. Humongous things.
Yeah, I've seen some of those pictures. I can't remember the guy's name.
Yeah, I had it written down, and then I moved it and I lost it. But anyway, he took this great image of the Columbia River Gorge, but he took the first image, and there was a tree in the middle of his photograph that he didn't like. So he went out. He left his camera where it was. He went out. He cut the tree down, and then he took the picture again.
And
the second one is what we all know.
Yeah.
Like, this is something that happened from day one.
Oh yeah, and I was just gonna say that, like, I guess from like a historical fashion kind of clothing standpoint, one of the first things I did when I saw this picture was like, all right, what did a Spanish Civil War uniform look like?
These guys were militia.
Yeah.
They weren't actually enlisted soldiers. They were militia. So if you see the photo, there's some of them that look to be in uniform, and then there's a bunch of them that
weren't.
And
they're
by
just
the way,
in clothes.
there really weren't exactly two neat sides, like two
No,
armies. Like
certainly that's true.
In this war, no,
that's certainly true. But like, what were the clothes? What were the general uniforms of people at that time?
Yeah.
And that's the other thing that's like really hard to tell, is like, I can't even tell what this image is supposed to be even representing. The closest thing I can get is to a dude who's wearing this outfit, but also with a cape and a fez. I mean, no, like, seriously, like, you're laughing, but seriously, that's the closest uniform that I can get to with it. And then all the other pictures are of these fatigues that I would expect to see on a battlefield, especially in the trenches at this time. So that's like, I guess that's another thing that I tend to look at. I mean, whether that has merit or not, that's something that I tend to look at when we're kind of analyzing these historic things as well. Is somebody who's going to be really in the trenches, is somebody who's honestly in the trenches getting shot in a war on the front lines gonna have a totally untainted uniform on?
seems unlikely.
in all light colors. And that's one of those things that I guess.
And it's amazing they're all clean. If you notice, everybody
Yeah,
in those photos.
but I mean,
not a
at
single
least
one of
the
them
like
was
the
dirty.
the following photo where we say it's from the same angle, but it's in like better view. Blah blah. Blah. His fatigues are darker. They look like the pants are rolled up, the sleeves are rolled up. It looks worn. It looks real.
Yeah.
Versus the other one, which is why I was immediately like, oh, cool. There's like the real one and the staged one, but. I mean, it looks like a muddy place that they're in, and the fact that his
dirty.
clothes are totally white, crazy. I mean, that's crazy. I'm not saying that it proves anything or doesn't prove anything,
September
but
in Spain, it would be dusty, but it wouldn't be muddy.
it would be
It'd still
getting
be
on
dirty.
their clothes.
It'd be dirty,
It'd
yeah.
be dirty. It wouldn't
Yeah.
be this pristine white that
Correct.
it looks like in the film.
It looks like he had his mother
Though,
wash.
again, though,
play
like
war.
this isn't a definitive thing one way or the other, but that's something that always plays in my mind of looking at the clothes.
It could be like, this makes it even more tragic, is that it was just his first day. He
It
just
was.
came running up
one.
to the trench. Oh, I am here, senors, I am here. Bang. And then he
Yeah.
didn't even have time to go down and
Totally,
introduce
yeah.
himself. Yeah.
Well, he's in a lot of photos. He's in at least 4 different images that I saw of Robert Kappas from that day.
Yeah.
In that same series. So I think it's 4. There's 4 of 7 or 8 of that series are available. And he is in at least 2. I take that back. He's actually in 2 or 3. He's not in every single one, but he's there in quite a few of them. But let's move into the last theory that we have,
Oh,
because
another
this
theory.
is a bit of an amalgamation of the theory that we've just been talking about, which is indeed the whole thing started out as a fake, and then it all got real.
Yeah.
And by that, how this theory goes is that, yes, Kappa and Gerda are there. They're getting the soldiers to run this maneuver for them and show this stuff. What they don't realize is there is actually a small encampment of enemy soldiers nearby who, as they watch them doing their maneuvers and running around and jumping over the trenches and firing into the distance and yada, 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 think, what the hell? Why are they trying? I can't believe they know we're here and they're attacking us. And so they fight back. And it's during one of these feigned runs that Kappa is shooting photographs of that the man in the falling soldier image, who, by the way, we don't know who that man is to this day, but he is indeed hit by a bullet from an enemy that was, as yet until that point, unknown to be in the area.
Yeah, I kind of like that theory. That doesn't necessarily have to be like, oh, we were defending ourselves. It could be as simple as they had this kind of covert camp and,
They're
you
just
know.
scouts, maybe.
Yeah, and they don't know.
Yeah.
And then the guys are like, oh, yeah, we're going to run all these training exercises. And they're like, wow, this is sniper fodder.
Yeah.
Cool.
The hard part
That's
is
to me.
that there is, so there's a couple of problems with that. One is that Kappa interview, he talks about machine gun fire, but for a man to be hit like that with a machine gun, you got to be relatively close, so it can't be any kind of sniperish situation.
Who's that guy? Oh gosh, I can't remember. I think it might have been like CNN or Fox or something. He was like a news reporter. He was like a big.
Oh,
like
the
a
one faking that he was in a foxhole?
No, he wasn't in a foxhole. He was like, ooh, our helicopter was shot
Oh,
down.
that was Brian Williams.
Yeah,
from
yeah,
NBC.
yeah, NBC,
I
yeah.
remember that guy,
And
yeah.
he was like, "Oh, we were shut down." I mean, this
No, he
is
said
this
he
would
said
not
they-
be the
they
first
got
time.
Fire. They received fire.
Right, but
or
this would
something
not be
like
the
that.
first time that somebody who was a journalist inflated
Oh, hell yeah.
the story behind an image, right? So, I mean, even if he was like, ooh, it was drills and then this guy got shot down, he could have gone the extra step of saying, oh, and there was machine gun fire. It was awful. It was really dangerous.
The thing I find weird, though, is that Kappa didn't seem to be particularly tight-lipped about his stuff. He seemed to be a rather open, talkative guy in general, most of his stuff, and yet this particular one he didn't talk a lot about, which is
That's the trick with lying. You know that,
well,
though,
but,
right?
but that's what
Don't
makes
do too
people
much of
think
it.
that, well, maybe that's why it's a fake, is that he didn't want to talk about it because it was fake. Or I've always wondered, well, what about, as, you know, Joe made the joke earlier of, you know, somebody says pew pew as you run and you fall and you die, and the first guy they go pew pew, and the first guy in the boiler suit falls down, and the second guy goes running, and instead of going pew pew, somebody actually
They go brat brat.
does actually pull the trigger
Well,
and kill the guy, and
there
then
is,
you're like, I've just witnessed a true to God murder, because it was an accident, but it was murder.
Or not necessarily murder. It could have been a gun accident, as is.
Yeah,
as this
it's
guy's pointing a rifle, believing
it's friendly
unloaded.
fire. Which
yeah.
you don't want
And
to tell the world that you got a famous photograph courtesy of friendly fire.
Well,
And nobody
but
wants to
then
talk about it.
there's-
Because here's let me finish. Is that here's the one really important thing in that area where all of this is supposed to have taken place. You know, it was never reported until the 25th of September.
Well.